All right, today we're going to be just reviewing graphing. So either getting the equation from a graph or graphing an equation or graphing a graph based on an equation. So first of all, just to kind of review, when we talk about linear equations, they're always usually in this form, y equals mx plus b. Or there's some number here multiplying with the x we call our slope. That's the rate in which your line is going up or down. It's usually expressed as a fraction. And then there's a number adding or subtracting afterwards, which is the y-intercept. That is the point on the y-axis that the line crosses it. Okay, so wherever it crosses the y-axis would be this value right here. So let's go through this and see if we can identify some equations. So again, all I really need to write the equation is I need to figure out what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Once I have those two things, I can write the equation. So looking at number 1 here, to write the slope, we basically need to identify 2 points on the line where it's hitting an intersection on the grid. Okay, so like an intersection like that would be like an intersection, right? So we want somewhere on this line where it's hitting an intersection. So it looks like it's hitting this intersection right here, as well as hitting this intersection right here. So if we, now all we do is just build the stair to go up the ramp. So it looks like it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over to 1, 2. So that would be a slope of 5 over 2. So to write the equation, be y equals 5 over 2x, because again, this is the rise, 5, this is the run, 2. So up 5 over 2, it's always rise over run. And then to get the y-intercept, which is actually the second point I went to, that's crossing at 3, so it would be plus 3. Okay, now this is review from all sorts of stuff that you guys have done, both this year, last year, year before. You guys should know this stuff already. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at number 3. So number 3, again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for points where it's crossing the, or hitting those intersections. So it looks like there's a point right there, and there's a point right there. So build the stair, go down the ramp this time. Looks like it went over 1, but then I went down -2. Okay? So down 2. So if it's going down, that is a negative direction, so that would be -2. So to do my slope, it would be y equals rises, or not rise. Rise, well, rise is -2, so it'd be -2 over 1 x, and then again it's crossing right there at 3, so plus 3. And since it's over 1, I don't necessarily have to put over 1. I could have just written -2x. It's the same thing, but that's basically what you would do there. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at this one right here. So it looks like there's only 2 points that it's at an intersection, right here and right here, right at the edges of the graph. Okay, so if I do my stair between those 2 points, looks like it went up 1 and over 5. So y equals, my slope would be rise is 1 over run of 5x, and then it's crossing right here at -5, so it would be -5. And that's your equation for that line. So I could plug in any point, say I plug in 5 for x. I could get my corresponding y value. So if I plug in 5 times 1 over 5 would end up just being 1. 1 minus 5 is -4. That's where the y is, at 5. It's right there at -4. So that's kind of the point of the equation. Now let's try going the other direction. Let's try graphing it given an equation. So looking at this one right here, looks like, again, identify my two things. So this would be my slope, 5, or 5 over 1, and this would be my y-intercept, -2. So when you graph from an equation, you always start at the y-intercept. So I'm going to start at -2. It's going to put a point right there. And then my slope is 5 over 1, right? So basically, it's always rise over run. So the top number is what you're doing up and down. Bottom number is what you're doing left and right. Since they're both positive, you're going to go in positive directions. So I could go up 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. There's a point. Now I could keep going up 5 and over 1, but that would go off the graph. If I wanted to go backwards to get to my original point, I could go down 5 and left 1, two negative directions, because the negative divided by negative is still positive. But I could do that again, but nope, that's off the graph. So there's only one other point that fits, so we just graph that, and there is our line. Okay, let's go to another example. So looking at this one, looks like I have a y-intercept of 1, so I would start at 1, and this time I have a negative slope. So in order to be negative, that means only one of these two numbers is negative. So either the rise is negative or the run is negative, but not both, because if they're both negative, that would go in a positive direction, because a negative divided by negative is positive. So if I look at this as -4 over 5, I could go down 4, that's a negative rise, so 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go down, that means I have to go to the right, because that's the positive direction on the run. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Big thing here is that I should have a negative slope, meaning it should be going downhill, right? If I plot this and it's a negative slope and it's still going uphill, I did something wrong. I probably went down and to the left, which again makes a positive slope. Okay, so I could also flip that around, and instead of going down 4, I could go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go negative run, so to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you'll notice that's still on the same line, so if I line those up, I get a line like that. And that's all you're doing when you're graphing from an equation. Okay, and I don't think there's anything else I need to go, well, let's talk about this one. So this one again is a negative slope, but there's no number adding or subtracting. So there's no number adding or subtracting. That means that you start at nothing, which math equivalent of nothing is 0. So you'd start at 0 and then you plot out your slope, -1 over 2. So down 1, right 2. You can do that until you get to the edge, or you can go backwards and go up 1, left 2. And you get a line like this. Okay? Also, if there's no number next to the x, that's just an invisible 1 next to it. So it'll be like a 1 over 1 slope. So you would start at 3, for example, and then just go up 1 over 1, or down 1, left 1, and you would get a line like that. Okay? And that's all you're doing for graphing.